Hello, welcome to today's event for the Diverse Perspectives in Digital Media and Design 2021 Speaker Series. To paraphrase James Baldwin, nothing can be changed until it is faced. This is certainly true of the inequities that have historically shaped the entertainment industry, both on screen and behind the scenes. This event is brought to you by UConn's Department of Digital Media and Design. We would like to begin today's event by acknowledging that the land on which we typically gather here in Storrs, Connecticut, is the territory of the Mohegan, Mantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Schaghticoke, Golden Hill Pagosset, Nipmuc, and Lenape peoples who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. We thank them for their strength and resilience in protecting this land and aspire to uphold our responsibilities according to their example. Today's event will feature a presentation with our guest speaker, Stacey Sealy, followed by a Q&A featuring questions from the virtual audience. Please take advantage of the YouTube chat box to submit questions for our guests, which we will try to answer during the discussion. I'm Heather Elliott Familaro, and I'm the department head for digital media and design at the University of Connecticut. DMD is a young department founded in 2013, which has rapidly grown to over 350 undergraduate and graduate students and 25 full-time faculty. We have 7 undergraduate concentrations across the full digital media spectrum: film production, animation, interactivity, business, and the humanities at both the Storrs and Stanford campuses. In our department, we value and celebrate our students' diverse backgrounds and perspectives and support their development as both individuals and as professional media creators. This Diverse Perspectives in Digital Media and Design Speaker Series is one celebration of those shared values. Now, I'm very excited to introduce today's co-host, DMD Digital Media Business Strategy student Christina Mcdonald and visiting assistant professor Nikki Steer-Justice. Christina is a senior digital media and design student finishing up her degree in digital media business strategies. Through the DMD program, she worked with the department's Social Media Analytics Command Center, or SMAC, on research surrounding social conversation and the 2020 presidential election, and is currently a member of DMD's Agency X, where she works on the digital marketing content for the department. Outside of the classroom, she works as a tour guide for the university's Visitor Center and serves as a trip director for the Alternative Breaks program. Following her graduation this May, she already has nailed a job and will be working as a marketing coordinator for Pursue Care. Welcome, Christina.
Hi, thank you so much. So sorry.
Yeah, and our faculty co-host today is Nikki Steer-Justice. She's an independent producer and seasoned entertainment executive with a background in film production and distribution. She has produced multiple projects, including Latino thriller Coyote Lake and horror anthology Nightmare Cinema, from acclaimed directors Joe Dante, David Slade, Mick Garris, Rutgeho Kitamura, and Alejandro Brugues. In 2017, she helped launch the distribution arm of Good Deed Entertainment by bringing in the Oscar-nominated Van Gogh biopic, Loving Vincent. She went on to become the chief operating officer, releasing over 30 films, including the critically acclaimed Lucky Grandma, which we're talking about today, before leaving to join our department at DMD. She continues to distribute films as the head of distribution for Buffalo 8, and her focus is on projects from diverse voices that are designed to transform viewer opinions, influence change, and reach underserved audience. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to hand over the virtual mic to you, Nikki, and hang on behind the scenes.
Thank you, Heather. And it is my extreme pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, Sasie Sealy. And I'm going to go into her bio a little bit too. She's an award-winning writer-director based in New York City with a still lingering Southern drawl. The New York Times named Sasie one of the 9 filmmakers who should be on your radar. And her debut feature film, Lucky Grandma, premiered at the 2019 Tribeca Film Festival, which is where we actually picked it up out of for Good Deed. Her shorts have screened at the Smithsonian Institute and festivals around the world, and she has been twice awarded the Short Filmmaking Prize at the Tribeca Film Festival. A fellowship and a new short with HBO in 2014 led to a chance to direct episodic television and her first DGA nomination in 2016. Sasie is also a member of Bullet Branded, the filmmaking collective and creative studio founded by Justin Lin and the Russo brothers. Fresh out of film school, she first made her mark in the commercial world of fashion and beauty, and she continues to direct projects for everyone from Maybelline to Calvin Klein. She's currently developing the television series Sugarland at Amazon with Alana Glazer executive producing, and is hard at work on her next movie, which I hope we're going to hear more about. Let's go ahead and show a trailer for Lucky Grandma.
Mike, we're not hearing any audio. Can you unshare and reshare, make sure that's checked?
Hổ嘢啦，黃奶奶，唔好俾佢走雞。
钱在哪儿？
我认识你阿姨的。我要雇一个保镖。
红龙可不是好惹的。
嗨，
What about him？
老公，我有点饿了。
一分钱一分货。
奶奶，你欠过他们的钱。
你要 money order 还是现金？
现金。
钱在哪儿？
我听说您最近赌运不太好，是吗？
那为什么这个乱七八糟的东西总是发生？
你個流年運藝仲係好噃。
I had to mute myself because I always laugh during that trailer.
I know I haven't seen it in a long time, Nikki. I was like, oh.
I know it has been a while. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey of how you got Lucky Grandma made?
Sure, because it was definitely not your normal film journey at all. So we had written the script, maybe 5 years or something before it got made. I mean, that's not that out of the box, by the way. Independent film takes a very long time. Films in general take a long time, but even more when they're indies. And at the time, it was like pre-Crazy Rich Asians. Nobody wanted to make a movie about a grandma, like basically starring an old lady. And definitely nobody wanted to make a movie that was mostly in Chinese. They basically, the question that you get from financiers is, well, who's going to star in it? And et cetera. So even though we got really good response from the script and people loved the script, we just sort of were hitting a brick wall in terms of raising financing for the film. And so, it went into a drawer along with a few other projects. And, I had started doing television and was like working on another script, but I got a call from the Tribeca Film Institute, who I'd had a relationship with previously. And they had told me about a new grant program that they were starting with AT&T. It had been in existence for only a year, and this was the second year they were doing it, and asked if I had any projects that sort of fit their parameters, which were basically like a movie you could make for $1 million that was from an untold story, an untold point of view or something. And yeah, that was like ready to shoot. And I was like, sure, I have something. So we pulled it out of the drawer, dusted it off, we submitted it. And it's a pretty rigorous process. It's like applying to Sundance Labs or something like that. You submit a budget and a lookbook and a script and blah, blah, blah. But the unusual thing about this program is that the 5 finalists, once you get to the final round, you do a live pitch for your film. It's basically like Shark Tank, but for filmmakers. And we did the whole thing with a celebrity jury. They have a little door, you bust through the door. We wore one of the little headphones, the VH1 headphones. and did like the whole song and dance. And when we won, which was kind of a shocker, they give you a giant like Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes check, like a big fake check made out of foam board, which went into our production office when we made the film.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it was very Cinderella-like. It was a long time coming, but when it happened very fast. Yeah, and they gave us $1 million. We raised a little bit extra money, but pretty much we made the movie for that. You know, it was an unusual deal because, you know, we couldn't raise like major financing. I couldn't suddenly make like a $20 million movie or something, because that was sort of the conditions for the grant. And we had to basically premiere it a year, like a little bit less than a year from getting the award. So we had to like stop everything, start casting, pulling the movie together, finish it, deliver it, which is actually a pretty brisk timeline. It's actually, for the whole process, was kind of like a race to the finish the whole time. So that was our story for how we got it on screen. So it was not normal at all.
I mean, when you watch the film, it's definitely amazing what you were able to accomplish with $1 million. Like, I know for a lot of people in the audience, that sounds like a lot of money, but when you're actually looking at budgets and costs, that is not a lot at all. How many shoot days was it?
So we had 25 shoot days, which is a lot for a film of that budget. But basically, we had to do it because Cy, when we made the film, was 85 years old. And I don't know how many 85-year-olds you know, but they can't really work a full day, especially she's pretty much in every scene of the movie. So we basically had to schedule around her, and also because of the action scenes. But the thing, it was, you know, tricky production wise, just because it's not like our budget actually accommodated 25 days. I mean, really, a normal movie with that budget, you'd probably shoot it in like 18 days or something. We just took the same amount of money and stretched it thinner over more days, which I don't, you know, which has its pluses and minuses. We can get into the nitty gritty of production if you want, but I do not recommend necessarily doing that. It was a sort of an exercise in naive optimism for trying to make the movie for that amount of money. We just basically said yes. People asked if we could do it, and we were like, yes, which is kind of the answer that you give when you're trying to get your first movie made.
Well, it definitely worked because it's amazing. So one thing that you also did a fabulous job was giving the audience a character that they could immediately connect with, and they found themselves rooting for throughout the film, regardless of what was going on. So were there specific moments in the film or aspects within her character development that you were adamant needed to be in the film to help this connection with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we worked on for quite a while, I would say, during the script development process. So, I mean, part of that, it's a little tricky because as a filmmaker, I also really believe that something by virtue of the medium, when you spend time with a person and you watch them, particularly like if they're alone, there's just sort of this automatic identification, I think, that happens just because of the process. Like, you know, a lot of independent films, like if you just spend time watching somebody brush their teeth, it's just like this very intimate thing. And then like, you're like, I love them, you know? So there's a little bit of that going on. But in terms of the script, we were also spent some time trying to make sure that you understood her situation at the beginning with like basically, you know, her kids wanting her to move in, and sort of, you know, trying to get it without like hitting it over the head too much. But this sort of thing that I think happens with a lot of like older people, you know, you become an old person and people start treating you like a child again. And there's something that's like very infantilizing, I think, about how we treat like the elderly in our society. And I don't know, I mean, if I were grandma, I just put myself in my shoes, I would basically be like, ah, screw you. I just like want to do what I want. Aren't I like, haven't I earned the ability to just do what I want? Like at this age, I should retire and you leave me alone. And so, you know, trying to put that clearly up front was definitely like part of it, and was sort of a thread, you know, that we kind of had going through about how people both respect you and disrespect you at the same time by treating you as a fragile thing and underestimate you, really, I think, you know, as you become an older person. And then one of the other two other key things that I think we worked on in the script for quite a while was sort of the backstory with her husband and how, like, her desperation for the money. I mean, I think that, you know, if you guys have written any scripts or like whatever, the classic thing is, it's sort of like, you know, establishing that you don't have any money up front and you're desperate for it. It's like sort of like Tootsie. He's like the actor out of work, or like whatever. I need the money to like pay off my gambling debts, whatever. It's sort of like the classic construction. So we wanted to have something like that, but wanted to hold the reveal of that until later in the film. But trying to land upon the exact right thing that didn't feel like a total cliche, but still felt resonant to us, took us a little bit of time to land on. And then the other thing that we worked on, I think, to build empathy for Grandma a little bit, was kind of her relationship with Big Pong. You know, he was sort of an early invention of ours. And basically, as soon as like we wrote him into the script, our producers are like, can we have more of Big Pong? Like, people just like liked him from the beginning. And, you know, there were earlier drafts where he, you know, he just wasn't there, like, nearly as much in the movie. And there's a very early draft where he died midway through the movie. I know. And which was traumatizing for everybody. So we stopped that. And sort of, you know, really focused on kind of developing her relationship with Big Pong as a way to kind of humanize her a little bit, because she is so like ornery and grouchy and like not necessarily nice to everybody. But, you know, we wanted to give her one person that she could open up to just a little bit, you know, in Grandma world, like her version of like opening up was sort of like through Big Pong. And one of the films that we looked at a lot when we were writing was actually, have you guys seen this little film called The Maid, Sebastian Silva's film? Do you guys know, Nikki, do you know that movie?
No.
Oh, this is a hilarious movie from Colombia that I would totally recommend. It's a funny movie. It's basically about this maid who lives with this, like, you know, upper middle class family. She's been with them for years. And basically she's kind of like getting a little older and they're thinking about replacing her. And she doesn't want to be replaced. She basically thwarts all of the other new hires that they like bring in to replace her. Anyway, she's really grouchy. And it's a little character piece. It's like a little tiny movie that was at Sundance like some years ago, but it's a gem of a movie. I would definitely recommend it. And
Yeah,
so
I'll check it out.
we looked at that a lot when we were working on the script, because she's a kind of similar-ish character to Grandma. And there's one character who comes into the movie who kind of changes her, basically the one character that makes her a little bit softer. She actually, yeah. But that movie I would definitely recommend. You should check it out. It's like a tiny little movie from Colombia, but it's fantastic. Very different stylistically, but similar sense of humor, maybe.
I'll definitely have to check that out. And I'm so glad that you decided to not, that like Big Pong was going to be okay. Because I was terrified throughout the movie. I kept being like, oh, I hope he's going to be okay in this scene. That's all I cared about. So I'm so glad that you decided to keep that with him living throughout the movie. But one of the scenes that I definitely immediately felt a connection to Grandma, like, oh my God, I love this woman, was in the casino scene, which was pretty soon. So we actually have a clip from that scene to show everyone.
Okay.
You sure you don't want to set some of that on the side, little lady? That is thousands and thousands of dollars, you know.
So I absolutely loved that scene. You couldn't really take your eyes off. You couldn't take your eyes off of her. I was definitely like on the edge of my seat. And one of our students, Nicole Ellis, agrees. She said that she loved the humor presented in Lucky Grandma, and that I feel that the lead actress was the perfect for the role and carries the film. What was the casting process like, and were there many different people auditioning for the role, giving you different choices?
Yeah, I mean, obviously casting Grandma was pretty much the key to the whole thing. So Sai Chin is she's definitely very well known, like within the Asian American community. She was Auntie Lindo in Joy Luck Club, and was also a Bond girl back in the day. People knew her, and she was always on our list, but she was at the top of the list because, like I said, she was 85. And so I was like, oh, maybe that's too old. I was looking for like a spry 70-year-old that we could add a little makeup, just because, there were chase scenes in the movie, and like, I don't know, my producers are very much like, let's try to find somebody younger, and then, we'll make the movie that way. It's sort of like the opposite of how all the high school series have like 20-year-olds acting as high school students. We were like looking for a 70-year-old to be Grandma. But I was auditioning tons and tons of people, and just like wasn't falling in love. And I think as a director, you always want to fall in love with your actors a little bit, and was kind of getting a little frustrated. I'd found some people who were okay, and a friend of mine had gone to an anniversary screening of Joy Luck Club in LA. It was like the 25-year anniversary, and Sai happened to be there doing the Q&A, and he called me immediately afterwards and was like, I don't know, Sace, she looks pretty spry to me. I would like give her a call. And, I sent the script to her, and then pretty much immediately she responded. I flew to LA, and we had like this epic 4-hour dinner with like 2 bottles of wine, basically me and Sai getting trashed, and like me trying to convince her to do the movie, and her being like, you know how old I am, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't care. And she ended up doing the movie. But yeah, she was pretty much perfect. And now that I've done it with her, I do think that there's some authenticity that comes from casting someone that old that I don't know if a younger actor would have been able to pull off. She's just, her body is just like a little different. Her point of view is just like a little different, and she kind of brings that with her. But she's also like a phenomenal actress. And I do think that, if she had been in a different circumstance, I mean, I think she's as good as like a Judi Dench or something, like as an actor. But, she just didn't necessarily have the roles, when she was coming up to be as famous as I think she should be.
Yeah, I agree. She's fantastic, and obviously carries the film because she's just so charismatic, and her sass is fantastic throughout. And I was talking before this about how as a domestic distributor, we traditionally never take on foreign language films because they don't perform domestically in the same way that English speaking films perform. And when I started watching Lucky Grandma, it just sucked me in, and you completely forgot that you were reading subtitles. And that's the feedback I would consistently get from friends and family and people who are watching the film, where they were like, this is one of my favorite comedies of the year. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your initial strategy. I know you struggled with getting investors on board, but who was your initial target audience? And then how did that evolve as the film released and we headed into the virtual theatrical space?
Okay, well, you kind of make me seem like I'm more business savvy than I am, Nikki. I'm like, I don't know if I was totally thinking about this. I mean, in a way, I was thinking, I've guessed that I was the audience because this was a movie that I would want to see. And I had always grown up watching a lot of foreign films, but, I was thinking about people who liked like The Host. Bong Joon-ho was one of my favorite filmmakers pre-Parasite. I just want to say I'm putting my like film indie cred out there. I've liked him for a very long time. And, I feel like that was a success for Magnolia when they distributed that movie. And, it's kind of like Cinephiles, but it's like a genre movie. I think the story is very accessible. It's not like, trying to be an obscure art film. It's, trying to entertain you. So I don't know. I don't know if I thought that much about the strategy of it, except that it was something that I would want to watch.
Yeah. And I think for us, one of the biggest surprises doing a virtual theatrical release, which Lucky Grandma was one of the first films to do that when the pandemic hit, was the fact that normally this type of film wouldn't be able to play in art houses in Middle America. And we were seeing that people were really gravitating towards it. And I think there was just something so relatable and so endearing. And especially at that point in the pandemic where people were searching for content that was a little bit lighter, a little bit different. And this one definitely checked those boxes.
I'm still searching for lighter content, by the way. I was like, until this is over, I don't know how much serious stuff I can watch.
I know, it's true. It's so true though. So I wanted to switch because I know a lot of students have asked questions about anti-Asian stories in media lately. And since we're talking a little bit about the marketing and distribution for the film, this was very much the case when we were going to release it. We were at the beginning of the pandemic, and we were seeing a lot of people boycotting Asian businesses and a lot of anti-Asian hate. And so part of that strategy was to partner with Welcome to Chinatown. So can you maybe speak to that and how you were able to leverage your comedy as a conduit for change?
Sure. I mean, I think, when we initially made the movie, we weren't trying to do anything like specifically political, unless you consider like, telling a story about a Chinese grandma, a radical act, but, but then when the pandemic hit, we were just so like sad that like the Chinatown businesses were hurting. I mean, this was like a community, like we filmed in Chinatown. They were so welcoming and so nice. And it's such a like amazing, colorful, mysterious, crazy place. And the idea that like that amazing like gem of a place of New York City like might not survive kind of was really scary, especially so many of the businesses, were small business owners. They may or may not necessarily speak English. Trying to get like a business loan is like a thing, and people were avoiding restaurants and all that stuff. And so I had seen Welcome to Chinatown like in a little article from New York Magazine, and they're really just two like millennial girls who like live there and like started this thing. They're super design and like media savvy, I think. So they've been like a huge success, but they started this program doing like business loans, helping like doing like, kind of different pop-ups and sort of collaborations to try to help businesses survive. They're both Asian American, I don't know, probably second generation. I don't really know specifically, who were just trying to help their community. And so we wanted to do something to help too. And so we kind of sparked a partnership with them, and part of the proceeds from the movie like went to Welcome to Chinatown and stuff. But I know I order stuff from them online. I hope that like Chinatown is doing okay. Since the pandemic has hit, I've only been back there like maybe once. I barely leave my house, so it's not just Chinatown that I haven't seen. But yeah, it's been pretty like tough, especially like lately, stuff has gotten violent, and it's just, I don't know, it really just boggles my mind, because who pushes down old people? I mean, I don't really understand that. I mean, even the stuff with the police and stuff is, at least, you're like, oh, implicit bias, it's systemic and stuff. But I mean, like attacking old ladies is just kind of like, I don't know, crazy asshole racist. Like who does that? I just don't, I can't even wrap my head around it, really. It seems, yeah.
It's crazy, yeah. So we also had a couple of students in the class ask about anti-Asian hate. So Cameron Slocum asked, do you think that having more films like Lucky Grandma will help fight against hatred towards Asian Americans? And how do you think Hollywood can help the fight against Asian hate? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think so, because I think it's really just about, seeing everybody as like a human being and not as the other, right? So I think like, anytime you have stories that really have, empathetic characters, and you kind of see like the whole person, I think that that's always helpful, and or at least I hope it is. I mean, it's sort of, one of the things I strive to do as like a filmmaker is create complicated portraits that feel like real people. One of my favorite like little things like in meteor blogs or whatever is I love that account, Humans of New York, because I love how like, there's always those people that you pass on the street and they have these backstories. Like all these people that you pass on the street and don't think twice about have these amazing, crazy stories with their own like hopes and dreams and all of that. And that's sort of, I think, the thing that kind of like lets you see beyond the person. I mean, I remember when the George Floyd incident happened, a lot of people were trying to talk about how nice he was or like what his hobbies were. Like, so you try to see beyond just the sort of symbol of like who he was to what he might have actually been like as a person. And I think that if Hollywood could help in that, I think that would be great. And trying to do stories, this is across the board for every group, not just Asian Americans, where someone is more than like a stereotype. And we push beyond sort of just exotification, like, and I think that change is starting to happen. I think that there definitely have been more and more stories, but we'll see. We still have like a long way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I know from the start of the film, I saw my grandmother in Grandma and like the journey that she had when she lost her husband, and like they were totally different backgrounds. Not my grandma was a farm girl, but I saw the same struggle and I saw her in her. So I definitely can see how like those characters just helping people relate to different people of different backgrounds is so impactful. So we have another question from a student. Victor Nuago asks, how can we best use our social media to support this community at this time?
I am not really sure. I mean, people have been doing great just sort of in terms of expressing your view or expressing solidarity. There's a few organizations. I know that Advancing Justice has been like working with a couple of AAPI organizations. So I think that anything you can do along that, but I mean, even small things, I think just sort of humanizing, I guess, asking questions, like being sort of open. I think that the thing that a lot of Asian Americans struggle with is sort of, we always make a joke about the kind of questions that I got growing up. It's like, where are you from? You're not really American. Are you? What are you? It's like even, Chinese Americans or Japanese Americans who've been here for 4 generations are still not necessarily perceived as American, like when you first see them. So I don't know if there's anything that we could do, but, portraits or just expressing your sort of solidarity and being, I think, open to people and hearing their stories is great.
Yeah. And I think there is also something really powerful in your choice for this film and seeing it break out in the way that it did. A lot of times when filmmakers are able to tell a story through a genre lens, it takes off the pressure of feeling like you're being preached at, and instead you just get completely lost in that story. And I think that was very much the case for Lucky Grandma. And I loved the way that you weaved comedy into all of these different elements of the story, including the marketing. I think my favorite part of our marketing campaign was the honest Asian mom reviews. So I'm going to read a couple because I don't know if people have seen them on the Instagram account. One of them is 5 stars, the most entertaining movie in 20 years from the writer's mom. And then 1 star, you have not watched that many movies from the writer's dad. And then 2 stars, the way grandma cooks drunk chicken is not how you make drunk chicken from Auntie Melody. So it's just one fantastic example of you approaching generational differences through a comedic lens. And one of our students, Victor Nuwagu, asks, do you see a change in Asian American women's behavior when comparing generations? If yes, how are the women from each generation influencing each other? I'm Nigerian American, and I notice my sisters are a lot less traditional than my mother. The same when comparing my mother to my grandmother.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's must be some differences. I think my own experience, which is like the only thing I can really speak to, is like a little unusual because so I'm mixed and my mom basically came to America and married a white dude and was like a little bit the black sheep of her family. She was a little bit of the rebel. And the thing is the one of the reasons that my mom like tells me that she did that is kind of because of the patriarchy and like traditional Chinese society, there's definitely that still exists, and my mom didn't really want that. And so that's, one of the reasons she married an American. So I don't know if there's like really differences because I think my mom was like kind of an early feminist and she has some things in common with grandma. I will just say she's always done her own thing exactly the way that she wanted. And it's a little scary sometimes. So yeah, I don't know if there's like real differences. I mean, I'm sure there are. But like I said, I think I can only speak to my own experience. And it's also hard because the term Asian American encompasses like so many groups, like Chinese Americans, Japanese Americans, Filipino Americans, Vietnamese Americans. I mean, they're all so culturally specific. And even amongst Chinese Americans, my mom is from Hong Kong, which is different from people who are from Taiwan, which is different from people who are from the mainland. There's like I don't know, it's complicated. So yeah.
Did you, when you actually were showing the film to your family for the first time, did you notice some distinct generational differences in their reaction to the movie?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I feel like there's this funny thing where, my generation, whose parents were immigrants, are much more focused on, oh, I've never seen anything like this before. It's so great to have representation and like all of this stuff. Whereas like people from my mom's generation and immigrants, she's been watching Chinese movies and soap operas, like the ones that grandma watches the entire time. So it's like not a big deal to her. Of course, the movie is centered around grandma because why wouldn't it be? So I think there's a little bit of that because I do think that the younger generation is a little bit more political about it all. So that might be like one difference. Whereas I feel like my moms and my aunties kind of were just all about the movie.
So we have another question from Victor. So Victor asked, and you kind of answered it a little bit, but what part of grandma do you most resonate with? And then is she a combination of other women in your life, or are there aspects of her character that actually mirror you?
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a little bit of me and grandma, but I mean, really, she was sort of an amalgam of women. And Angela is in mine's life. She's my co-writer, Angela. Kind of like a little bit of my mom, Angela's grandma. I don't know. We have a lot of very strong, forceful women in our life. Kind of drew from all of them, but those are like the main ones. And in terms of what I relate to, I mean, I think grandma's quest for independence, I don't know. I think that is something I really relate to. And sort of one of my biggest fears about getting old is that, my body and my mind will like betray me. I think that's sort of, and that I will have to be dependent on other people. So that's something that's very much I can relate to, like from grandma, and that is like a secret fear of mine.
When people watch Lucky Grandma for the first time, one of the most common threads with the comment section is that they have never seen anything like this before, and it's a film that they never knew that they wanted, but definitely needed. And a huge part of that is your style as a director and your vision as a director coming to life on screen. And you had a very different background from a lot of directors where you were in advertising, you did short films. And how were you able to leverage those experiences and use them to create your own distinct style when you did finally shoot Lucky Grandma?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in terms of the style of grandma, I mean, that's really more sort of like from my love of cinema, which kind of has been around like since I was a kid. Like my dad is like a really big film buff, so I grew up watching like everything. I was a little bit of like a movie omnivore. Like I've watched everything from like Hiroshima Mon Amour when I was like 12 to like, you know, The Goonies and like Raising Arizona. So it was sort of very all over the place. So there's a lot of stuff, you know, that I drew. Like obviously the Coen brothers are a big influence. Obviously Bong Joon-ho. There's like a little homage to Agnes Varda at the beginning. I don't know if anybody caught that. Like that's sort of like she's one of my faves. And just like little things, Hong Kong action movies that kind of I grew up watching when I was a kid, and things like that are sort of all played in there. In terms of the background from commercials and TV, I think that's really just, I think experience on set is like helpful, especially when you're making a movie like this for not enough money, pretty much. I mean, filmmaking is basically an exercise in problem solving, right? So there were a lot of problems when we were making this movie. And so I think that just the experience on set was helpful. I think, and also in terms of maybe winning the pitch, that might have been helpful just because you know, you pitch all the time when you do commercials, and being able to communicate your vision for something and sell it really, I think is sort of an underrated aspect of filmmaking that people don't usually talk about. I mean, I would love to be an artist in a bubble and not have to sell anything, but the reality is that filmmaking requires money and people, and you need to be able to convince people to trust you with an enormous amount of money in order to make anything, unless you're making it with like just your video camera and like your friend in a room. But you know, there's not that many movies like that. So I think that experience was helpful, sort of just pitching in general.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I think your understanding of storytelling, like I think you're definitely underselling it, just in terms of me getting to work with you as a director. Like obviously I came in later in the process, and I think out of every director we've worked with, you had the most specific opinions on cuts for the trailer and cut downs, and aesthetically making sure that your vision was clear in all of the marketing materials. And I appreciated that. Like I love that confidence, especially coming from a female filmmaker, where you knew exactly what you wanted, and how you wanted to accomplish it, like even after the film was shot. So I did want to share that anecdote, and I would love to do one more clip if we have time, for those who haven't seen the film to be introduced to Big Pong, and also a little bit of the soap opera culture that Sasie talked about. So we'll share that clip real quick.
他们知道他是个皇帝，说他穿了个农民的衣服，他什么都敢说。
但他还是爱他啊。
等到他发现，他被骗了，他一定不会信任他的。
哎，剧情不是这样的啦。
你懂什么？你跟女人睡过吗？
有啊。
是啊。
在家里的时候，就那么一次。
是鸡吧？
当然不是啦，我才不需要花钱买女人呢。
漂亮不？
妍妍她很漂亮。 看啊？
我得洗个澡啊！啊，我洗完了，我们再看下一集。不许偷偷的看。
OK。
And another amazing clip. I love that clip. And I think it kind of shows Big Pong and Lucky Grandma's friendship, and really a friendship that we all needed to see, especially during the pandemic. Lighthearted and full of love, and their relationship was so pure, and it was just absolutely wonderful. So we have another question about their relationship and male leads in general. So he said, Victor asks, you mentioned in your Vice interview that you usually see Asian American women represented as quiet and submissive in media, while in reality, they behave the exact opposite. Do you feel Asian American men are also misrepresented on the big screen?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, I definitely think that this is a thing, just sort of the general emasculation, I guess, of Asian American men on screen. I mean, that was sort of like why it was such a big deal with Crazy Rich Asians, that you had like that shower scene, you know, it's sort of like treating them as, you know, three-dimensional human beings that might be sexy, is sort of like a big thing. So I think that that's definitely part of it. And also, I think in general, Asian American men are also kind of depicted as quiet. There's not a lot of talking going along, I think, in a lot of Asian American characters traditionally in TV, or like that I can think of. And there's sort of, I think it kind of goes with the whole sort of exotification thing. It's like, we don't really know what's going on behind those eyes, so we'll just have you not say anything. There's, you know, which I don't necessarily think is true. Although I will say that the Asian men in my life are quieter than the women, but that might just be anecdotal.
And I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I would love to hear a little bit more about, sorry, I think we cut out. Hold on one second.
You're there, Nikki. I see you. Are you there?
No, it's the stream.
The stream. Okay, hold on.
The stream is blocked.
All right, 1 second.
We'll just wait a second. Stacey, I'm going to ask you about your next projects.
Oh, okay.
Did it cut out the question after the clip too? Or?
Oh, let me look and see if I can.
No, that's why I stopped. My husband shouted down that it cut out. This is what happens when we show too many clips.
Oh, really? Why does it block the stream? It's like too much bandwidth or something?
Because I think it thinks you're pirating.
Oh.
I know. Okay. So even though these are the clips that are used on social media, but.
Yeah, and are short. They're pretty short.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Christina, I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. So one of them also just being her advice for filmmaking students. And I know that was on your list for questions.
Is this your house, Nikki? Are you in Connecticut?
It is. No, I'm actually in Massachusetts, Deerfield, little farmhouse. It's on 53 acres, which is fantastic during a pandemic. I know. But we went to Boston to pick up my sister from the airport for the first time, and we actually went to Chinatown and had dim sum. And it was just so strange being out in public and like just walking around in a city, because I feel like I've been isolated in the country for a year now.
Oh, I know. I got my first vaccine and I'm so excited to get my second, but I'm also like, am I going to be totally socially awkward? Like when I go back, I feel like I'm going to have to readjust to interacting with people.
Yeah. There was a gathering outside. Oh, All right, great. Let me try this question again now that we're live. So Sasie, what's next for you? Can you tell us about what you're working on?
Sure, I can tell you a little bit, maybe not too much. One of the ones that I'm very excited about is my co-writer on Grandma, Angela. She and I are making a TV show, or hopefully we'll be making a TV show. We're developing it at Amazon with Alana Glazer. She's our EP. And fun fact, she was one of the jurors on our celebrity jury that gave us the money for Grandma. That's how we met her.
What a small world.
I know. But yeah, so we're working on that show and it's called Sugarland. So we'll see. Maybe we're just writing the pilot now, but cross your fingers. Hopefully it will actually become a TV show. So that's one of the things I'm most excited about. And there's a lot of others because, you know, it's the pandemic. So I'm developing like everybody else, like 5 million things. I've been trying to use the pandemic to write.
Well, I'm definitely excited to see that when it hopefully comes out. One question is kind of a two-parter question for you. So as someone who did not start out your career with the intention of ending up where you were today, when you started in advertising, can you tell us a little about your decision to pivot, and what advice do you have for students or audience members who are also thinking about a similar career move? And then also just what advice do you have for students in general who are looking to go into film?
Okay. Well, I wouldn't say that I pivoted. I would say I always wanted to make movies, and commercials were a way to pay rent in New York City. Don't get me wrong, it's a great day job and it's very fun. But yeah, it's just trying to get a movie made and figuring that all out. It took me a little while. I think in general, it takes people a while. Not always. There's lucky few who it happens for fast. But I think one bit of advice that I would say is that you shouldn't think that it happens easily. I feel like every once in a while you read a story in like a magazine or something and you think that it happens like fast. But the thing is so I went to film school, I went to NYU, and I have my class is like considered like the golden class. Like we have this crazy successful class. It's like insane. Like if I told you all the people who are in my class, it would be like nuts. But the thing is like, because I've known them for years now, and I don't know, the average amount of time that it took a person to get a movie made from writing the script to actually making it. Some of them, maybe, I don't know what the average is, maybe like 10 years, maybe definitely over 5. The average is definitely over 5 years. And so it can take a really long time. And there's like a lot of ups and downs. And the thing is like, the thing about film that you realize is, I remember when I went to my first film festival with my short, and I met like a bunch of feature filmmakers, and they were hustling their next project just like I was. And I was like, oh, it doesn't magically change after you make one film. You then have to hustle money for the next film. So I don't know. I figure even Steven Spielberg has to hustle somewhat, maybe not for every movie, but maybe for, if he wanted to make like an artsy movie, maybe he'd have to hustle a little bit. So, you know, I think that you just have to accept that it's going to be hard, but it might be worth it, I think. And there's a lot of ups and downs. And I think you just have to try to stay as even as you can. I mean, it's like anything, I think, in the arts or whatever. The only thing worse might be being an actor. There's a lot of rejection.
Sasie, how did you make the jump from NYU to being able to pay your rent directing commercials?
Yeah, that was lucky, I would say. So basically I had made some shorts that did well, and that kind of got my foot in the doors, basically because I had these short films. And, you know, I happened to like be in New York. I knew people in like fashion and stuff, and I had like a photography background. So I was sort of able to like make my way in that world. Although I will say, being a female director, they just automatically assume that you want to like do fashion and makeup commercials just because you're a woman. I never got offered like a car commercial or anything like that. So maybe things are changing a little bit, but that's part of the pigeonhole that like you're fighting, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, heaven forbid we see a car commercial through a female lens.
Yeah.
It's usually being gifted to the female from their husband.
Yeah. I also get sent a lot of tampon commercial boards, things like that. Yeah.
And do you plan on continuing that, or is the dream to just be focusing on features and TV?
mean, I am continuing right now for sure. And I mean, storytelling, I think, is my ultimate sort of dream. But one great thing about commercials that I don't think like you should, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I don't even think of it as like selling out or something like that, is that you get practice. It's kind of awesome. Like you just get time on set, and commercials often have like healthy budgets. So you get to really have a lot of resources to try things. I mean, sometimes you get a little spoiled because you may not have as many resources when you make your film, but I think that, you know, someone gives me the opportunity to make something, I want to take it and I want to try to practice my craft and like make things. So it's sort of like a little bit of a playground or a way to like keep practicing that's like a little lower stakes. It's not low stakes in terms of course you want to please the client and do a good job, but it's low stakes in that like if you make a crappy commercial, it's not going to affect your next movie. Like you have a chance to try things and experiment a little off the radar, which is fun.
Yeah. And how do you feel the pitch process differs from pitching to clients in advertising versus films and TV?
I think a lot of times with when you pitch for a commercial, there's the sandbox is kind of already drawn for you, usually because there's a brand, you kind of know the brand like a little bit, and the agency may have like a kind of direction. You definitely want to add your like special sauce to it, but they kind of have already kind of, you know, drawn the parameters. Whereas when you think you're directing or pitching something for a movie or a TV show, you are really coming up with the whole thing. There's no like existing look necessarily, unless like the exception being if you're going to guest direct on a TV show, then the sandbox is like made for you. And then you definitely have to play nice within those lines. Because you're kind of a guest in someone else's house when you're doing episodic directing. But when you're working on your own project, you are really kind of writing it from scratch, which is pretty fun. It's my preference. If I have my druthers, that's what I like to do. Because as Nicole says, I have a lot of opinions.
I love it. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sasie, for this and for being with us on a Friday afternoon when it's gorgeous outside to talk about your experiences. I know the students have really valued it, and we cannot wait to see what you're going to do next. So I will let Heather jump in to wrap this up, but we really appreciate you being here with us.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, what an incredible conversation. Sasie, thank you so much for sharing your personal stories and so much about you as a filmmaker, about your process, about your life experience. Gosh, it was just like an incredible conversation. And thanks so much for Nikki and Christina for being so engaged and doing such an awesome job moderating as well. For those in the audience, if you haven't seen this incredible film, Lucky Grandma, it's available on Showtime and to rent or buy on Amazon, iTunes, and Google Play. We're going to put the link in the box right now, but you must see it. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll love it. As far as our next event, we've got everyone is invited on Saturday, April 24th, so 2 weeks at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, when we welcome director Carlos Lopez Estrada and actor poets Mila Kuda and Tyrus Winter for the summertime virtual red carpet and festival screening. We're collaborating with Jorgensen Center for the Performing Arts, and we will be on Jorgensen Digital Stage for a virtual red carpet event with the director and the stars of the film Summertime, a pre-release screening of The Sundance Darling, and followed by a Q&A with the director. It is a ticketed event, so for this event, you will need to purchase tickets in advance via the Jorgensen box office, and Michael's gonna put that also in the chat box for you right now. Check out the entire rich lineup of all of our awesome events that we've had this semester for the Diverse Perspectives in Digital Media and Design Speaker Series. Go to dmd.uconn.edu/diverse, and don't forget to subscribe to us here on YouTube so you'll learn about all of our great content that's pre and coming in the future. And also follow us on social media at UConnDMD. Thanks again to all the wizards and organizers behind the scenes. It's taken a stream of incredible people here at UConn to pull this all together. So I'm so grateful to everyone's help, and thanks most of all to the virtual audience out there for joining us today. I hope all of you feel as incredibly inspired. And as you said earlier, Stacey, you know, this needing something to uplift for during the pandemic, this conversation has been something that has really, really lifted me up personally, and I hope everyone else is out there. So thank you, thank you. We're going to keep doing this exciting work to inspire our young students and hope for them to have successful careers in this industry. So thanks again. Stay safe, wear a mask, and have an awesome weekend. Bye from all of us.
Bye. Thank you.
And you can hang on a second.
Okay, the stream is ended.
We forgot to mention that. We always are like, oh wait, people never know at the end. We always have that in the top that we're supposed to remind people, like, don't worry, you don't have to click off and hang up, because it's so anticlimactic at the end when you're just like dangling